Welcome everyone to Through the Void Gate, a Warcaster podcast for new and experienced players. Deploying in 3.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our Kickstarter episode, mini episode number 3. Today we're going to be talking about Empyreans. Before we get down to all the new goodies they got, Justin has a rules update for you.
Howdy. Yeah, I've been asking way too many questions in the Kickstarter forums because this is where you can get all your rules questions answered finally. One thing that's come up in playing the games is what happens when you gain an activation token in the middle of your turn without falling. Technically, the current rulebook doesn't cover that. It just says when you fall and get an activation token, your activation ends. It doesn't really cover it anywhere else. You only really check for activation tokens when you go to activate things for the most part. They have cleared that up. What happens is your activation will immediately end as soon as you gain an activation token. So there's only a few situations where this can happen, and Vengeance Sequencer is kind of the catalyst for what makes this possible. So like if you get hit with an Entrophier from a reciprocation attack from a Nemesis or a Scourge with that on there, and they spike to put an activation token on you, you're just done. You don't get to do any more of your activation. The Sentinel also has access to this on a melee weapon. So,
yeah, as does the Scourge.
Yeah. So there's 2 weapons and 3 models that this can come up with. The Nemesis also has a Cortex that lets it just spike to shoot back. So it's kind of a niche rule, but something tells me that this is not going to be the last time we see something up. So I guess it could, yeah. There's going to be a lot of things in the future of the game. So anyways, let's jump right into the Empyreans and talk about their cadre, the Harbingers of Cirrus. I thought I missed an R there. So the first, I thought it was going to be the Harbingers, but it's the Harbingers of Cirrus. Their first squad we're going to talk about is the Antecessors Eternal. These boys are Speed 7, Mat 4, Rat 4, Defense 4, Armor 3, 2 boxes. They're 40mm bases. They're a 3-man squad. They fly, and they have Weapon Master. That's going to be important as we go forward here. As most Empyreans do, they have the Arcana Module. This means that when I target them with any kind of Cipher card, or my opponent targets them with a Fury, they get to charge. That's going to be really important as we talk about some other rules that they've got. Their charge is Impulse Reactor. While charged, it's just the same thing as the Marauder charge. While charged, if this unit has an activation token on it at the start of your turn, you can remove the activation token from this. This is probably one of their stronger rules besides that Weapon Master. You think so, Sneaky?
Yeah, and actually I just realized you're never going to want to put the Quartermaster on them because I guess if it removes, so this is a really interesting thing. So if you can remove it from the model, I guess it doesn't matter which model, because if you can remove it, you can remove it from the whole unit. Because there's another one of those little weird rules interactions, because the Quartermaster doesn't have Impulse Reactor, right? And this specifies model, not unit. But I guess with the way squads work, if any of the models can remove the activation token, then the whole squad gets to remove the activation token.
The only, because activation tokens act in a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
It's just things like continuous effects that really.
Yep. I hadn't thought about that before, but yeah.
This, in tandem with the Arcana Module, really makes some of the classic, what would be answers to this kind of being able to multi-activate this unit, not really an option. So like normally you would null collide a unit like this to get rid of the charge to make it to where they couldn't multi-activate. But the way the thing works, after that resolved, they would just get another charge. So null collider is not a good answer. Cryolock would just charge them after they get hit. So the activation token means nothing to them at that point. Impulse Reactor is a really insane rule for them.
Yeah, in combination
for any
with Arcana Module.
Right?
I mean, in general, yeah. Anything that has Arcana Module.
Yeah, Arcana Module with Impulse Reactor is a pretty insane combo.
Yeah, I mean, it it's not going to affect stuff like stun module or null weapons, but being, the Furies that, Cryolock's a really popular Fury, and, being able to ignore Cryolock is great. Null Collider is a really popular Fury. Being able to ignore Null Collider is great. So, yeah, it's definitely useful.
Then they have one of the best squad spikes in the game, Slip Displacer, which just basically lets the squad move 3 inches and then do its normal squad placement shenanigans. On a speed 7 squad with medium bases, that means they're going 10.5 plus another 6.5. That's 17 inches of movement they can almost guarantee if spiking doesn't matter to them that turn.
Yep.
It's very strong. And we haven't the unit already, without even talking about its weapons, seems very dangerous.
Uh-huh.
But now we're going to talk about the weapons. And the first weapon is their ranged attack, the Dark Hold, which I think is a pretty sick name for range 10, POW 4, and has the Soul Seeker rule, which means that they can target warrior models without line of sight. Very good rule to have. I mean, you can't hide your weavers. And then they have 2 fusion blades, which are range 1, POW 4 kinetic weapons. The Darkhold is an energy weapon. So what are your thoughts, Sneaky?
So we definitely need to mention that this is a DC 3 squad.
That's a very good point. Yep.
So, DC 3 is a new land for us. So it's definitely interesting. They're incredibly powerful. I've put them on the table a couple of times now, and every time I do, they just do massive amounts of work, and they are sneaky tanky with defense 4, arm 3, 2 boxes. Like, they can, with flying, they can be hard to take out.
Oh yeah, I did not mention they were flying. This is a flying squad.
Yeah. No, you mentioned they were flying.
Did I?
But
I thought I missed it.
So, they're sneaky tanky, and just being able to throw out 9 attacks in an activation, they're Mat 4, Rat 4, so they're decent stat wise.
They're already above what we've become all accustomed to as squad stats, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
They've got 4 out of 5 stats that are higher than what we're using.
Yeah. Well, 4 out of 6 stats because they have an extra box.
Oh, that's true. I wasn't even counting the health.
Or 5 out of
top.
Yeah, 5 out of 6. So yeah, they're, I don't know, they just do so much work. They can be wherever you need them to be because they're stupid fast. Combination with a Fulcrum Displacement Index, turn 1 in skirmish, they can be meleeing stuff in your opponent's deployment zone.
That'd be 30 inches of movement, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, it'd be 6.5 from the Fulcrum, 6.5 from Slip Displacer, 6.5 from Displacement Index. So that's 19.5, plus their 10.5 from their regular movement.
Sure. So 30 inches.
30 inches of movement.
Yeah.
Now there is a card and a solo activation involved, though.
Right. And they're losing their arc to, for their attacks, but still 9 attacks.
Well, in skirmish, even without the other 6.5, they get.
Yeah. It just depends on where things are placed and deployment and whatnot, but it's just a lot. They can murder things. If this squad is at full strength and goes into something, it can take out, if it can get all of its attacks in, especially if it can avoid cover on its range attacks, doesn't have to worry about that on melee attacks, it can just do so much work just through weighted dice. If you roll enough dice are going to go your way.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
And they honestly, as far as squads go, they've already got an advantage to the Mat 4, Rat 4, right?
Right. Yeah, we've already talked about that.
They just take every buff really well. I don't think there's a squad buff that's actually bad for them.
Yeah, there's this. So Empyreans doesn't have very good native squad buffs. In fact, they have 0.
Right. But I'm talking just Reiteration, Discordian.
Yeah.
Plexus Densifier. Defense 4, Arm 5 is a stat line.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot you can do with this squad that just makes them turns them from 10 to 11 to 12.
The craziest thing going into this Kickstarter is I was wondering after they were released if we were going to see more models that have the self-removal of activation tokens and whatnot, because that alone seems to be like one of their big calling cards. And the fact that almost everything can remove its own activation token gives them so many options, it hurts my brain. It's not like you can account for, okay, he'll use this once and won't be able to activate it or whatever. You literally like gotta account for every single option almost every time, because anything can activate endlessly.
Yeah, it's it's fun playing Empyreans and just like having your whole army on the board and having one activation token out. it's silly. Yeah, it just gives you so many options in the game. But this squad is just gross. Like whatever you put it into, it's going to do work. And especially I started running both of the extra attack cards now because both of the squads, and we'll talk about the other one in a second, benefit from both the extra range and the extra melee attacks. So it doesn't matter which one I draw, I can get extra attacks on both my squads, which is great because going from 9 attacks to 12 just means whatever I want to die is probably dying. And if you throw these guys into like a big scrum with a bunch of stuff around, they can just murder all kinds of things.
More attacks, more better.
Yes, more attacks, always more better. The slight weakness to them is, they're fat. 3 medium bases can be difficult to place when you're working around 1-inch melee attacks, because that's where the mass majority of their attacks are coming from. So it can get a little bit difficult to use them optimally, but even if you can't, I mean, getting 7 attacks off with a squad is great. If you only get 2 of them in there and, your other dude's relegated to range attacks. But at their top end, they compete with heavies. Like
their top end is terrifying.
Yeah, it's
well,
gross.
I mean, and once we get talking about another model that's in this Kickstarter, their top end only gets higher.
Yeah. And the awesome thing about them, like compared to the Sentinel, is they're so arc efficient. They only need 1 arc versus the Sentinel needs 3. Right? And now when I play, like I can look at them, like we're talking skirmish here. I can look at them and be like, okay, I can activate my Sentinel over here, or I can activate these guys. And if they're on the opposite sides of the board, that means I have so much threat potential on the board, because having 2 incredibly powerful units that can murder things is great. It's really, really great. So these things are absolutely, I mean, I'm close to saying busted just because they can just do so much and they're so hard to deal with. And you can bring them back to life, which we'll talk about later.
I mean, you can really bring them back to life. And also removing that activate, like even if they end without the charge, later on we'll talk about a model that just makes that pretty trivial.
Yeah. Well, and even if the crazy thing is, like with Arcana Module, like even if you have to spike for Slip Displacer, right? You can then play a Cypher on them and put it back, right? So you can play Mortality Stabilizer and bring a dude back and charge them, and then you get to reactivate them again next turn. Or if you've got Discordian and Reiteration in your hand, drop 1 on them, and then you get your charge back. Or throw out an Aggression Theorem, or something else. Like it's
I just can't believe they put out a squad that is base 3 attacks each model with map 4 and rap 4. Yeah. Like these guys are almost a scourge each, right? Like if you flip their defensive stats and take away some rat, then you got a scourge.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're pretty nasty.
They are very nasty. Yeah, like you have to take away stats from them to be a scourge, except for give them a box. Like it's like what? They are very nasty. I'm very shocked to see. Like I didn't expect them to have a gun coming into the Kickstarter. I thought they would be very nasty just having 2 melee attacks, but they've got guns too. So we'll see. I mean, none of these rules are final, but they're pretty close to final. If any of the old Kickstarters have been any kind of note, like Kickstarter 2, I don't think anything changed from the rules previews to the final.
Mm-mm.
Kickstarter 1, there were just a couple small tweaks, so we'll see. This unit is, if you're playing against Empyreans in your meta, get used to seeing these guys. They will haunt your dreams. They are nasty.
Yeah, I mean, you got to kill them as soon as possible. They do suffer from, the same thing that all squads suffer from, where as soon as, guys start dying, they start losing out a lot of efficacy. And with these guys, dropping one dude is 3 less attacks you have to worry about. So that's a big deal. Yeah. I'm not saying.
I mean, we'll get to it when we talk about the model that's coming up later, but
true. But I mean, that's gonna cause you have to activate in certain ways, and it changes things. And yeah, so I mean, it's important to kill these guys. It's important.
You need to kill them all is the problem.
I mean, preferably.
Because what you could potentially be doing is giving them more movement. But we'll get to that when we talk about the other model.
I mean, there's always more stabilizer, but yeah.
True. And then that just charges them and gives them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next squad that the Empyreans got are the Exalted Paragon. They're Speed 5, Mat 4, Rap 4, Defense 2, Armor 4. They're a 3-man 40 millimeter base squad with Weapon Master, which is important on them again. They also have the Arcana Module, so charge with ciphers, charge with your opponent's furies. They have, for their charge, they have Nemesis Engine. When one or more models in this squad are destroyed by an enemy attack while charged, after the attack has been resolved, one model in the squad can make one attack, which is a huge de-incentivizer to trying to kill any of these guys as well. They've also got 2 boxes. I don't think I mentioned. So they're kind of like the Marcher World's engineer to kill. So then we're going to talk about their weapons. They have a ranged weapon called the Numinous Agitator. It's an energy weapon that's range 10, POW 4, and just has Malefactor on it. Just straight Malefactor. No charge, no anything, Malefactor. Then they have a Fusion Glaive, which is kinetic, range 1, which I thought those things looked big enough to be range 2, but range 1 and POW 5. It has a spike on it, though, for power attack. Immediately after hitting a Warjack with this weapon, this model can spike once to cause the Warjack to suffer the system failure continuous effect. So, Sneaky, what do you think about these?
So worth noting is that they're DC 2.
I need to say the DC. Because actually, for Empyreans more than anybody, DCs are actually big.
Super relevant, yes.
So it's... Good catch there, Sneaky.
Yeah, it's just really weird with them being DC 2 because if you look at the stat lines, the stats are the exact same as the regulators, right? But this squad has an extra attack and nominally, I mean, potentially, we'll just say equal. We won't say better. We'll say equal rules, right? Because they have a spike for Malefactor. Yeah, the regulators have spike
Malefactor, but always have null. These guys have the power attack option, but always have Malefactor.
Yeah. And the regulators get +1 defense, and these guys have Nemesis Engine. So they both have defensive charges.
It's +1 defense and Pathfinder.
It's true. Pathfinder's relevant. So they both have defensive charges. Their effects on their weapons are similar. Like null is really good in certain situations. System failure is really good in certain situations. So it's so hard not to compare the 2 squads. And one being DC 3, one being DC 2 just feels weird. So these guys just feel really, really powerful just because of what you're getting for what they cost. Right. And the thing is,
AC, even if you compare them to their Centurions, right? That's a DC 2 squad. That's just 2 models. They each have an extra box, but they're just 2 models, right? So once you kill any one of them, they lose a lot of that squad movement shenanigan stuff that we see a lot. Like they may be an extra box, but they do lose a lot for being that extra box too. These guys just feel very efficient for their cost.
Yeah, I mean Centurions are also Mat 5, and they have Cleave on their weapons range 2. So I mean they've got I'm
not saying Centurions are bad. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
just saying, like, comparatively, they like these guys, they're in this weird ballpark where they're comparing to a 2-man squad and a 3-man squad, and they've edged their price closer to the 2-man squad.
Yeah, it's really weird comparing all these different units. But this, like, just in Empyreans, the squad is nutty, right? Just because of the things you can do, particularly on primary size. I've talked about it before, where you just never activate a squad, and you just fulcrum things onto points. And going from fulcruming 3/3 1-box things onto points to 2/4 2-box things onto points is huge. These guys are going to be so much harder to remove. It's going to give Empyreans so much more objective presence. And these guys are a lot scarier than the
Sabers.
The Sabers. And so it's so whenever something comes in and tries to take that point, you've got a good solid squad that can deal with
you
threats.
Got minimum 6 attacks with Mat 4 Rat 4.
Yeah, and so it's I think the Mat 4 Rat 4 is worse than 3 with high intensity, but they do have more attacks,
right?
In general, other than the thing where you kill something and you get extra attacks nonsense that the Sabers do. So it's hard to talk about like attacks, but just looking at defensive stats is real easy. It's these guys are going to be a problem. Like, they're definitely going to be a problem just because of the scenario presence. Like, not even talking about activating them. Like, just having them as an option is good, but even then, like, activating them, getting a guaranteed 6 attacks if you have all 3 of them, like at Mat 4 Rat 4, again, you're just getting a lot of value out of it, which I'm a big fan of, because it makes squads feel useful and not feel like a bad activation, right? Like, I'm excited about having squads. I'm excited about activating. And I think that, if this sort of level becomes the new standard for the game, I'm excited about that, because I feel like the old squads, there wasn't enough room to work with. But a lot of the things we're getting in this Kickstarter, it gives, there's a lot of different power differentials at, DC2 and DC3 that they can play around with and really come up with some interesting and unique things that I'm excited about.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Oh, go ahead.
With the 2 new squads, what do you think the ratio is of you taking which for full battle force?
FBF. I was going to talk about this when we get through everything, but you're taking 2 cadres in primary size, 100%.
Like, one of each squad type, you think, or?
Yeah, two full cadres, so one one of each squad type, and then a saber to fill in for your 5th. Because I like running 5 squads. I think 5 is the best number of squads for primary size. You could easily run 3 cadres if you want to spend another $150 or whatever it costs for a cadre box.
If money wasn't a thing, you would take 3 cadres. Like, you think that's optimal?
I would take 5 of these squads for sure. I would not necessarily take 3 cadres. It's just a lot of investment, and Empyreans have a lot of useful utility and tech pieces that you lose out on once you start investing that much into your primary size.
Okay.
Yeah. I think 2 is a must, 100%. You should have 2 cadres if you're playing Empyreans, and you play full size. If you only play skirmish, you want 1 cadre. Definitely want 1 cadre.
Yeah.
But primary size, I think 2 is a must, 3 is an option.
Cool.
Okay, anything else to say about the Exalted Paragons?
No.
Okay, so let's get to the Paragon Commander. By the way, I just want to say before we launch into this guy, I love this guy's model. I don't know why I have a thing for guys with shield. And he has a really cool shield.
Is this the one that's standing up on his tail?
No,
that's the last guy.
The champion model.
Okay, my bad.
This guy is DC 2. See, I'm going to put it at the front now. So I don't.
So
Speed
this is
5,
a-
Mat 5, Rat 4, Defense 3, Armor 4, Focus 4, 40 millimeter base and Weapon Master with 3 boxes. He has the Arcana Module, just like most of the rest of Empyrean. He has Arc Relay 10, which is a little mopey, but he's got the old Weaver charge of where he gets the plus 5-inch range on his Furies if he's charged. So could be 5 or 15, or 10 or 15, depending on your status as being charged. And then it's just straight into weapon rules with this guy. His gun is the Numinous Agitator, which is the same weapon as the Exalted Paragons. It just has Malefactor on it. But then he's got the Celestial Cleaver. It's a range 2 PAL 5 kinetic weapon with a spike called Thaumaturgic Initiator. When this model destroys one or more enemy models with an attack with this weapon during its activation, after the attack has been resolved, this unit can spike to use Thaumaturgic Initiator. When it does so, you can immediately play and channel a Fury cipher through this model. That is a crazy rule. It's good. It's a good rule. Like, it has limitations on it. You have to kill him with the cleaver, but getting to play that extra Fury is huge. So what do you think about this model?
So this is a DC2 model, right? You did mention the DC, but I'm prefacing that. So it's a DC.
Like, David, I mentioned it this
No,
time.
no, you mentioned it. So it's a DC2 solo. So it puts it into, an interesting place because, again, this is a new DC for us. So figuring out what fits in there and stuff. But looking like just at stat wise, it's basically the exact same stats as the Regulator Reeve. It has one more. Yeah, it has one more rat, one more defense, but the regular Reeve can have the same amount if it's charged. And so what you're really looking at for that extra DC is the Thaumaturgic Initiator, and it's definitely a really good rule that can come in clutch sometimes. The problem is it's not always going to be super useful. You might not have extra Furies in your hand. You might not have any Furies in your hand. And then it's like, okay, cool. Is activating this guy really worth it? And which, I mean, it's still a really good model even without the spike. It just costs a little bit. I think it's a really good model. I'm excited to have it as an option. And those couple of times where the Thaumaturgic Initiator is useful, it's pretty cool. Like, you can pull off some interesting things, like killing off a little squatty and then velocity projecting a solo off the board. Feels good, right?
Well, and what's crazy is it's during his activation. So on those end of activation scoring missions, if he kills a squatty and then he velocities the Morningstar off the point, he could potentially score that point. Right? It isn't like it's something that'll trigger at the end of the turn or something. So the fact that it happens mid-activation is really strong.
Yeah, and being able to just get an extra card out of your hand, allowing you to cycle faster and just be more efficient with your cipher deck is important. But it does have, it's situational. He's speed 5. It's, he's got to kill something with it. So it's
it's got limiters on it.
Like, it's not like this rule is straight broken. It's just a solid rule to have. Like, I'm excited to have it. It adds options. I love options. I love cool, fun, interesting plays where I can look at the board and be like, all right, it's time for a YOLO play.
Well, I mean, Mat 5, PAL 5 with all the squads that are showing up right now, and you have the gun that could potentially soften up like any of these 2-box Armor 4 squad members.
Yep.
I think it's actually going to be a very powerful and relevant rule. I think in previous, skirmish, it probably wouldn't have been as relevant just because, you were fighting Warjacks most of the time. Like, lists were Warjacks and solos. So if you managed to be able to walk, and beat up that Weaver, you'd get to do this, right?
Yeah.
But now squads are going to be so prevalent. Like, every list in skirmish, I don't know if anybody's going without at least one cadre. So you're going to be facing at least two squads.
Yeah, I think it'll be like it'll especially be good on primary size, right? Because you're facing even more squads than solos. I've so far from me playing, I've played a couple of games so far, and I've been able to get it off once.
Well,
Like,
I think primary size it'll be harder because everything is more spaced out. I think you'll end up having to make suboptimal plays to use it because, like, as soon as he spikes to use this, his range also goes back down to 10.
Yep.
So, it's a really good rule. I don't want to undervalue the rule. It's a really good rule, but I think finding optimal ways to play it is going to be the hard part.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And getting him in those positions to use it is going to be hard.
Yep. It's just more tools in the toolkit, which I'm always happy about. You know.
I will say that for his stats and what he does, I kind of wish they'd have made him have the Regulator Reeve stats and just made him DC1. I know. I'm talking about buffs for Empyreans, which I think I'm talking about nerfing a model to make him DC1. Because DC2 is hard.
We're done for the night. Justin saying something positive about Empyreans. We got close up shop.
Well, I mean, here's my thing. Empyreans, for as much power as they got in this Kickstarter, their DC costs, besides the Exalted Paragons, are for the most, well, and their hero, are pretty high.
Outrageous.
Yeah, they're pricey.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be getting things on the board as efficiently as some other factions, and that's hard, right? Like that's really hard to deal with. So
that's the biggest thing I've been dealing with the changes, just getting used to the new deployment costs because it's expensive. Like the cadre is expensive. Having a DC3 squad, multiple DC2 solos, it changes things.
By the way, I'm going to try and not be mad about this model that he has a shield and no higher armor than anybody else. I'm just going to say it's a deflection shield, and that's why he has one more defense than the Paragons.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a deflection shield. It's a parrying shield, is what it is. It's a buckler. That's what a buckler looks like for.
We've come full circle.
Sure, whatever. I mean, shields at defense. And then
in this game they had armor. Although I do not want to see him at armor 5. Then he can keep his DC 2.
Yeah. So I've had to change how I play Empyreans for sure after incorporating this cadre. And one major change has been the inclusion of the charging a Void Gate card that I used to never play because it wasn't useful. I was able to get things out on the field efficiently enough to where I didn't need to play it. It was usually a dead card in my hands. Now it's useful. Now it's
sounds insanely useful now.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you what, seeing an Eternal Mediator and the Antecessor's Internal just coming out of a Void Gate is a scary, scary drop.
Yep. Yes, it is.
So here we go. Let's talk about the Eternal Mediator since I just brought him up. This guy is DC 2, Speed 7, Mat 4, Rat 5, Defense 4, Armor 3. He's got 3 boxes and he's on a 50mm base with Flight and Weapon Master, which is also important. One thing to note about him, he does not have Arcana Module. So, somebody tries to charge him up with a Cypher, tell them no. Anyways, he does have one of the most insane rules I've seen considering this cadre. He has Phylacteric Vault. Phylacteric. Each time one or more friendly Aeon models are destroyed by an enemy attack within 10 inches of this model, you can charge this unit or another friendly unit within 10 inches of this model with 1 art. So remember how I was saying, like, the Antecessors, trying to get them not to be charged is very hard? Well, your entire cadre here is Aeons. So if he's within 10 inches of any of them and within 10 inches of that squad, and you happen to kill anything that's an Aeon, he just charges the squad and they get to activate again. It's pretty insane. Mm-hmm. He has a spike called Sacred Restoration. During its activation, while within 10 inches of a friendly Aeon squad, this model can spike to return 1 destroyed non-attachment model to the squad. Place this models within another 2 inches of another model in the squad. A squad can never have more non-attachment models than it was deployed with as a result of Sacred Restoration. So he basically has Spike for Mortality Destabilizer. He
Mhm.
also has Charge for Slip Field. When this model is targeted by an attack while charged, after the attack is resolved, this model can move up to, which is the charge version of the Reflex Cortex from the Firebrand. He has 2 weapons, and they're both insane. The first one is called the Void Howler. It's an energy spray that's 8 inches, POW 4, with a null on it. So, that is such a nasty guy. He also has the Plasma Bulge?
Bulge.
Okay.
The Plasma Bulge.
The Plasma Bulge. Anyways, kinetic, range 2, POW 5, and with continuous fire. This model blows my mind. Tell people about it, Sneaky.
I mean, I think you feel much more strongly about this model than I do. I think it's good. Again, it's DC2. I think it fits in with where the DC2 models are. It's the champion model for the cadre, and it does a good job of working with the cadre, which I appreciate that it's not just an individual model on its own that does its own thing. And yeah, I mean, I think it's good speed. Like, it's a good solid output solo. I mean, I love sprays, right? And having a
Sprays are gross.
range
Null
range
sprays are more gross.
yeah, range 8, POW 5 or POW 4, rat 5.
Rat 5 is what makes it kind of crazy, but
yeah, is makes me feel real tingly inside. And continuous fire is amazing. So having fire on a weapon is great. So it does a really good job of being a output solo. Being speed 7 flying means it can get to places it needs to get to. And then the other stuff is nice. Phylactery Vault, I think, is interesting. I haven't had it come up in my games yet, but it does give you options, and it can be it could make things a little bit easier on you, and change up your opponent's plans and things of that nature. Sacred Restoration is great because we've discussed how ridiculous the squads are, and being able to bring back a super tanky dude for an arc is great. I mean, I wish it was the Grafter's Spike personally, but I'll take one.
the Grafter can't bring back 2 medium bases. There's no reason this guy should be able to.
So, Sneaky.
Yeah. The Grafter can't bring back 2 medium bases yet.
Safe to say this guy makes you tingly in the Plasma Bulge?
No, it makes Justin feel certain types of ways.
This model, like, those angels are really good by themselves. This guy turns them up to 13.
I don't know about 13.
Listen,
15
the problem is if you don't kill the entire squad, he just adds so much efficiency to them. Oh, well, I did Spike for Slip Displacer, but I kept him within 10 of this one guy, or of these 2 guys, so now they're charged. So now they get to activate again. Oh, wait, I'm going to just charge him during the turn. I'll move him up. I'll put another guy out. So you don't take me below 6 attacks ever. And then if I have Mortality Destabilizer, it's even worse for you. He is a monster. And just both of his weapons having super valuable effects on them, he is insane.
Yeah, he's really, really good.
The Phylacteric Vault being a non-charge ability too, like he doesn't have to be charged to start handing out the art, is also kind of crazy.
I mean, things have to die, right? Which,
but I mean, people need
like
to kill things, and it's a 10-inch range.
I like things
and this cadre adds all Aeon, so you've got 4 slots or 3 slots plus the bonus slot that are all Aeon.
Yeah.
So anytime any of them dies, he can charge anything up. So like that Sentinel that you might have just summoned, he's charging that up. He's like, okay, fine, kill that squad. If you kill the whole squad, I've got a fully charged Sentinel that's going to beat the hell out of it.
This is true.
It's one of those things where if you don't organize your attacks right? It's like, oh, well, I killed this Aeon. Oh, you're going to charge your Sentinel. Okay, well, I'm going to shoot your Sentinel with these attacks. Okay. You took 2 of the arc off of there. Well, let me kill this other thing over here since I don't think that's going to hurt the Sentinel. Oh, shit, I just charged at the Sentinel. It's like he makes this very weird no-win situation with a lot of the army. That Phylacteric Vault is like the most absurd rule. People want to bitch about the Relicon. This thing is insane.
Yeah, it can be. It can be. I haven't had it be yet, but I haven't been, I haven't been playing it to its full potential. So
He
I'll
earns
definitely
every bit of his DC3 or DC2. Sorry, DC2.
Yeah, no. I think he's a great solo. Absolutely at DC2. 100%. He does not need any changes. It's perfectly fine.
Anyway.
As Justin would say, perfectly fine and balanced.
Yeah. I don't know. The Empyrean cadre in general, since we've now talked about the whole thing, it's very strong. Like I say, like we have said, it does. The solos have some DC problems, but I mean, it still functions really well even without the solo that you're forced to take with it, because everything else is just so powerful in this cadre. I think a lot of people are going to learn to fear and respect the flying squad.
Oh yeah, 100%.
If you don't have a plan for taking out that entire squad at one time, and they happen to have a sentinel in the game, I feel bad for you.
Yeah. My one sadness is that there's no attachment for my squads, but
There's a quartermaster.
If that changes, yeah, and we'll talk about the quartermaster in a little bit.
Yeah,
but
because actually the quartermaster does some pretty silly stuff with them.
yeah, if either of these squads get an attachment, I'll be extra happy. Extra
No,
happy.
neither of these squads need an attachment, especially not the Paragons. Those things are already a steal.
I think every squad needs an attachment. It's boring to not have an attachment. It's boring.
No, they can be DC3.
Yeah.
The Angels have to go to DC4 because I don't even know what do they want. What do either of these squads want?
I don't care.
There's nothing these squads want. They have it all.
He just wants nice things, Justin. Why won't you let him have nice things?
Just want nice things. That's it.
Okay, so we've talked about the cadre. Let's talk about every army got two other a solo and a hero solo to add to their forces as well. So for the Empyreans, the non-hero solo they got was the Heavy Saber. He's DC2, but he earns it. Speed 7, Mat 4, Rat 4, Defense 3, Armor 4. If those stats seem very similar, it's because that's what most warjacks are like, except they're slower.
Yeah, he's 3 boxes.
And he's 3 boxes.
It's a
he's
light
on
warjack.
a 50mm base with Weapon Master, so that makes him essentially a light warjack. He has the Arcana Module, like most of the other Empyreans. His charge is Dynamic Accelerator. While charged, this model ignores movement penalties for rough terrain. So Pathfinder by another name. He has a spike called Eclipse Drive, which is the same thing all the other sabers have, which is where he can spike at the end of his activation to remove his activation token, or to not get an activation token. Then we start talking about his weapons. And he has a light meteor cannon, which is a force weapon, range 10, POW 4, has a spike on it for force ram. Now, force ram is slam, but it doesn't care about base size. So he can slam vehicles, he can slam anything but a charge sentinel. So just be aware of that. Then he has 2 Protean Forges. The Protean Forges you know and love from the Sentinels and
just demons.
Just the demons. The demons are the only ones that can have it. I always want to say the Sentinel, but it is just the demons.
Mm-hmm.
Range 2, POW 3 with 3 different attack modes. 1 is armor piercing, 1 is range extender, and 1 is strafe. Range extender is +2 range on the attack, so he could be a range 4 melee. Strafe just lets him have a melee strafe weapon. What do you think about this model, Sneaky?
I love it. It is. I've always wished that I could build a demon with 2 Protean Forges because I love the Protean Forges because of how flexible they are. And the only problem is that with the way that the weapons and the weapon points worked out, is those would be the only weapons you have, and you couldn't have a shoulder mount or back mount, I guess is what it is on Empyreans. But yeah, this dude gets a gun and 2 Protean Forges. So I'm super excited about this model because it's the demon I always wish I could have, and it has actually replaced the Protean Forge demon that I had in my list. The fact that it's a solo is awesome because now I can activate a Sentinel and another light warjack.
The fact that it's a solo is actually a huge deal, right?
Yeah. Which is really, really awesome. Again, DC2, meaning things are expensive to get out.
It's a light warjack skinned as a solo right?
Yep.
Like,
yeah, I was gonna say, but it's replacing a light warjack, so it's not changing my deployment cost any, right? But it's awesome. You know,
the
Eclipse
only
Drive
difference between this and a
means
light warjack is that you cannot play your overdrives on it, which arguably is a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah.
Because some of the
I mean,
overdrives are really good. You can't tune it up. You can't impulse induce it. So you'd have to use encrypted command. But
kinetic accelerator.
oh god, thank God. Okay, I'm glad they thought of that one. That's gross.
Yeah, which is why I always wanted to be able to put it on the demons was for kinetic accelerator, because just imagine strafe on every single thing.
I mean, and there is also just the idea that it is also limited to one arc.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the Heavy Saber is a very good model. I think that it will see play. It will see play. It is very good. I think it earns its DC2. I don't think it's a model where I can argue where, hey, maybe it should be DC1. I think this is a very DC2 model, and I think it's very good. I think I think people are going to be a little frustrated when they can't kill it and they get Protean Forged, but very good model. Very, very good.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is, this is right where we would expect a DC2 solo to be.
Right. And like looking at most of the other DC2 solos, I think most of them are pretty fair for their points. The Divine Tempest might be a little bit too good for her points, but
might be a little.
But AC
I think Divine
nice
Tempest pushes what DC2 should probably be, but this guy is probably right about there. Protean Forge just scare me, but
yeah,
just strafe melees scare me.
Yeah,
Armor piercing scares me. Like, there's a lot to be afraid of on this mod.
Now, if I could have gotten 2 Protean Forges and a Nova Cannon, I would have been much happier. But
I'd quit the game.
Cannon,
I'd be done.
For what he is, I think it's a really good gun because it gives him. It adds utility to him on top of just killing.
Yeah. I was gonna say, but I'm okay with Light Meteor Cannon because it does give you that utility and that extra scenario presence. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. I mean, the Nova Cannon would have been fun. Well, Nova Cannon, I hate Nova Cannons. They're just too good.
Like, easy using the fine word.
No,
but
tone it down a little.
The Light Meteor Cannon, I think is entirely fair because he's Rat 4, can only be charged with 1. He has to hit, and then Force Ram is a very, very good roll. It is an insane roll. There's only like a couple other models in the game currently that have it, right? It's the Aegis, and I think
Corvus, and
I think the Light Meteor Cannon for your Jack, right?
Because
this was a Jack on the checks, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I mean, it's not a very, very common rule in the game, and it's arguably one of the strongest because it gets around all those restrictions that these rules usually have, except for the Sentinel just saying no. So have we beat up the hot spots about the Heavy Saber enough?
Yeah.
Okay, because now we're going to talk about our Rulian, Aeon Weaver, and this model I have some thoughts on because I think this model is just absolutely insane.
Aurelion.
However you want to pronounce it. I played too much League of Legends, so it's a Rulian to me. Anyways, he's DC 1, Speed 5, Mat 3, which isn't relevant, Rat 5, Defense 3, Armor 4, Focus 5, 3 boxes. He's on a 50mm base, Pathfinder, and Revelator. Revelator will be important. He has Arc Capacitor, which is the same ability as on the Oculus currently. When you channel a Fury through this model, after the attack is resolved, you can charge this model with up to 1 arc if it is not already charged. That's going to be important. His charge is Annihilation Synthesizer. If you channel a Fury through this model while it's charged, the target of the attack suffers -1 armor until the attack is resolved. Armor piercing Furies.
Let's go.
Oh my god. Like you thought that the velocity projector was nasty before. Now it's only gotten worse because it's getting an extra red die if you hit something, and it's got you at -1 armor. Like, woof. That is an amazing, insane rule. But his arc relay has to be low, right? He's arc relay 16 base. There's no way to extend that. Arc relay 16 is insane. It is the highest base arc relay in the game currently. 16 is a very long way. In skirmish, that means even with his speed 5, he could walk and shoot. If he walks directly forward, shoot 1 inch directly into your opponent's deployment zone.
Can I say it, Justin?
You start adding in fulcrum shenanigans.
Can I say it?
What?
Fair and balanced.
It is insane. It's very, very good. He has a spike called Fury Reciprocator. When you channel a Fury Cipher through this model after the attack is resolved, this model can spike to return the Cipher card to your hand. So he can recycle whatever Fury he uses. Now, Sneaky, would you like to run people down on the 4 states of what can happen if he's charged, not charged, whatever, with his Furies? Because the way Annihilating Synthesizer, Fury Reciprocator, and Arc Capacitor work together?
Yeah. So Fury Reciprocator is the same spike that the Martial World Weaver has. Now, the way that Arc Capacitor and Fury Reciprocator interact is really interesting. So if Aurelion is not charged initially, you have 3 options. You can do nothing after you cast your Fury and keep him not charged. You can charge him with Arc Capacitor, or you can charge him with Arc Capacitor and then spike for Fury Reciprocator to bring the card back to your hand. So even if it has no charge on it, if you want that Fury card back, you can have it back.
Right, because both of them trigger off of channeling a Fury Cipher through the model. So, and as the active player, you can choose what order.
Yep.
So
they both
wait
trigger
to be charged.
Yeah, so they both trigger when you channel Fury Cipher through this model and resolve after the attack is resolved. So they resolve at the same time, which means you can choose what order that they resolve in. So if it's charged, you have options. So if it's charged, you can do nothing, which is fine. You can spike to Fury Reciprocator and get the arc back, and get your arc back in the well and get your Cipher card back. Or you can spike for the Fury Reciprocator, get your card back, and then charge it with Arc Capacitor to get your arc back on Aurelion. So
are you telling me I could do double armor-piercing velocity projectors in 1 turn?
Indeed, you could.
You could actually infinitely do armor-piercing velocity projectors.
Yes. You could play, as long as Aurelion is alive, you could play 2 armor-piercing velocity projectors every single turn. Assuming it doesn't get nulled or something. Or
Aurelion doesn't die. Like, I think if you start playing velocity projectors every single turn, somebody's got to turn it. Somebody's got to be like, kill him.
Yeah. So it's really gross because it's just, if you want that Fury back, you can have it back. Like, no matter what the situation is. So if you want the Fury back, you can have it back. If you've got 2 Furies in your hand and you want to cast one through Aurelion and then bring it back and then have the Paragon Commander go up and kill something and spike and cast that again, and then second Cipher phase, you want to play another Fury, you can do it. Like,
the options with this guy as far as Furies go, he just breaks it, right? Like all the things you thought you knew, he's like, oh, I can do this and that. Like,
there's zero opportunity cost, right? So if you want the Fury Cipher back in your hand, you can have it back no matter what, which is just crazy.
Well, surely for all that insanity, he's got to have a bad range weapon, right? Wrong. He's Rat 5, remember? He's got Abyssal Pulse. It's an energy weapon that's range 12, POW 5, and it has that Soul Seeker rule that a lot of models are getting, where he can target warrior models without line of sight. By the way, he also has Revelator, so he doesn't even care about stealth. But he's also got a really other scary rule called Negative Energy, which lives up to its name because it's going to put a negative energy on the board. If you discard a Cipher card from your hand at the end of your turn before you draw back up to a full hand of Cipher cards, this model makes 1 attack with this weapon. So he gets out of activation attacks virtually every turn he's on the board, because if you aren't discarding a Cipher card, you've either got to have straight fire in your hand, or I don't know what you're doing. You're holding on to too many things. He's borderline almost always going to get this attack, and it's Rat 5, POW 5, and he doesn't even need line of sight to your warrior model. Mm-hmm. It is insane.
Getting getting a free aggression theorem every turn that the model is on the board is just super value, super value. Like,
I thought he was going to be worth it with just like if you took that rule off, he'd be worth it. He is insane with that rule on.
Yeah,
like anything that gives you bonus attacks in this game is just outrageous.
Yeah, it does have it does need a little bit of editing there because it reads this model make one attack, so it needs to either say may make or makes, and that actually changes things because, say for example in a game I was playing the other day, if the only model for that he could target is Phaetheon living, and I don't have a choice but to make an attack, that could be a big deal. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to say may make, but if they make it where he has to attack, that could be interesting.
It could be. I mean, I think most of the time there's something he's going to want to hit.
Yeah, for sure.
But there might be a corner case situation where he's really sad that he had to make that attack. This model is just, God, this is like one of my. Well, first of all, I love the model too. He looks like a portal turret on steroids, but he's a portal turret that didn't skip leg day, and he just has some of the most insane rolls. The shenanigans you can pull with him, just because, especially because fulcrums are part of the faction too, right? So we were saying that base, he's 21 inch fury range if he moves, but you add a fulcrum in there, and that's another 5 inch. So he's 26 inches of potential fury range on turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
In skirmish, like, good luck hiding from this dude. He's scary.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty gross. I mean, depends on line of sight and terrain and things of that nature, but it's everyone knows how much I love Astrius. I love Astrius, and this I've currently put Astrius to the side to play Aurelion, and I think
Aurelion also makes the Paragon Commander. That's the Weaver you get with your cadre. Like, you're not as incentivized to put him out earlier, I feel. Like, you can put this guy out for 1 DC and feel pretty good about what you've got going on.
Okay, I gotta say though, I'm super conflicted because the fact that he has to bench Astrius makes me really happy, but the fact he is benching Astrius for something terrifies me on a level I'm not willing to admit.
I will say this guy is much more killable than Astrius, but this guy is still a light warjack for defense stats. Defense 3, armor 4, 3 boxes.
Yeah. I mean, you can also hide this guy a lot easier than you can Astrius, but because Astrius wants to be scrumming it up. But you don't have to bench Astrius. Astrius is still a super valuable, solo to have. But this guy just gives us another option, which I think is great.
Which is the theme of the episode.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because it changes things. Because I'm running less warjacks, and I'm not using my warjacks as much. Like, I think I'm even gonna drop my other demon and just run the sentinel, and so then Astrius is pretty much just there for the sentinel, and that just kind of feels bad when Aurelion is so much more versatile, right? So it gives. I like having the options now, not just being like Astrius spam, even though I thoroughly enjoy my Astrius spam because I love them. But Aurelion is crazy. In my last game I played, it was not relevant for most of the game until it walked up to a nemesis and then armor pierced it and did 3 damage with 1 cacophonic whatever, which I thought I had taken out of my deck, and then shot it in the face and killed it, which was great. So yeah, it's.
I'm telling you what, people are going to learn to hate Aurelion. He's going to have one of the biggest targets on his head.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the problem is Aurelion, even at his worst, you sit him behind a building, and if anybody gets next to any points within X inches of that, 12 inches of that building, then he's still getting free attacks at them.
Yep. Yep.
He is a super gross model. One note about his negative energy is that you have to. It's the discard at the end of your turn. So like Sec making you discard a card would not trigger an attack from him.
Right.
Just for clarification, so that nobody's like trying to get bonus attacks out of nowhere.
That'd be amazing.
Well, that wraps up the Empyreans. Any last thoughts about their cadre and all their new models before we start talking about the Quartermaster?
I mean, Empyreans went from feeling OP to feeling OP.
Well, I think what scares me about Empyreans, hearing you talk about it, is like their jacks were already like, I would say the Demon was an A tier and the Sentinel's like an S tier. And you're like, I'm taking much less of these things. And I'm like, what? Because I know AC, I would love to have A and S tiers. And you're like, I'm taking less of these.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god.
I think I can do without these.
Yeah. That is, in my mind, is terrifying.
Yeah, like the great thing is
probably liberating, right? You don't have to like if you don't get a Sentinel on the board, or if somebody finds a way to get rid of a Sentinel, it doesn't feel near as bad because, hey, guess what? These flying guys with 9 attacks are just going to come up and kill whatever killed that Sentinel, right?
Yeah, it's been nice because I'm not having to rely on the Sentinel as much. Like I have other options, and so like Empyreans are kind of in the same space as AC, just to a lesser degree, where you're probably going to wind up replacing a very large portion of your collection with the new stuff that came out in this Kickstarter. But at the same time, like Empyreans are already in a good enough place to where you don't have to 100%. Like you need one cadre. You don't need 2 or 3. And like, so like me currently, I would be benching 4 squads and 2 demons, which is like half of my collection. But like the stuff that I'm getting is awesome, so it doesn't feel as bad. And at the same time, like I know that the stuff is strong enough to where I don't have to bench it. Like it's a choice, right? Whereas AC, like you pretty much need 2 cadres, and all of your vessel squads are going away. And a lot of your solos are going away. So it's like it doesn't feel as bad because I don't feel forced into it, right? But you're still going to wind up.
You don't feel as.
Yeah, like you're still going to end up replacing a lot of stuff because these new models are ridiculous.
Yeah. Is that everything we wanted to say about Empyreans?
Yeah, I think I already covered my feelings on it. They get tons of options. Their like faction identity got carved out a little more with the like constantly being able to have action tokens off of all of their things.
Well, to be fair, in that whole cadre and all the models we listed, the Saber was able to remove activation tokens, and the Antecessors Internal, which are the flying squad. Everything else kind of had to play fair with their activation tokens.
But I mean, Nyx can take off activation tokens. The Sentinel can take off its activation token.
There's a lot of activation token removal. Do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't.
You know,
this cadre in particular, if they took away the activation shenanigans from that squad, I would feel much better about that squad. But
they didn't get any more removal shenanigans other than like
besides that squad.
Other than the heavy saber. No, because you're trading out that squad for another squad, which has activation removal shenanigans, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So they actually lost activation removal shenanigans, but
right, you keep telling yourself that. You're
yeah, he's like finding something to
whatever
gripe
else
about.
you
He's
sleep
like,
at night, sneaky. Okay, let's go to the Quartermaster, which is the Wildcard Hero attachment. It's DC +1 for all factions. Everybody can take the Quartermaster. She doesn't care who she works for. She's speed asterisk because she is always the speed of whatever squad she's in. She's map 4, rap 5. She doesn't have a melee weapon, so the map 4 doesn't really matter. She's defense 4 with armor 3. She's a 30mm base with 3 boxes. So defense 4, armor 3 with 3 boxes. So pretty decent stat line. She's a Neko cap for defensive stat. She is a wild card that'll work for anybody. An attachment that'll go to anything. She has a charge.
Any squad.
She has Aegis Field as a charge. So wild charge this model gains cover. So that's important that it says this model, so you can't charge her and give the whole squad cover. She has a spike called Walking Arsenal. This model can spike at any time during its activation to use one of the following munitions. Holophage rounds. First ranged weapon attack made by each model in this squad gains corrosion this activation. Silly good. That is silly good. Null detonators. In addition to its other weapons, models in this squad gain null detonators this activation. Seeker ammunition. Range attacks made by models in this squad ignore cover this activation. All very, very, very good rules. I think that all of them have their uses. We'll go through after we talk about her whole card, kinds of squads that she wants to be attached to. And but just keep those in mind, because those are all very, very good. The null detonators one gives them all the null detonator grenades, which is a weapon that's on her card. It's a range 6 energy and has null on it, where if it doesn't do damage, but it will automatically take one arc off of something. She also is equipped with an assault rifle, which is ballistic, range 12, PAL 4, with a charge for targeter. And she's equipped with a spiker, which is the same thing as the AC squad. That is range 14, ballistic, PAL 4, and has a spike for carrying ablator. Immediately after hitting a model with this weapon, this model can spike once to cause the model to suffer the continuous corrosion effect. So, Sneaky, what are your thoughts on the quarter?
It's interesting. There's, being able to add a relatively tanky attachment to any squad in the game is solid. I mean, every single person can take this attachment in all the factions. It's an attachment and it's a hero. So it's completely free to take in your list. So literally every single player that plays the game should own this model, because there's no reason not to, because it's free to take at all times.
Yep.
And other than that, as far as like the rules go, they're kind of situational. Like, there's certain times where it can be useful, and then a lot of times where it's just not. And especially on like certain squads, like on any melee only squad, the only thing the quartermaster does is add a body and give them the option for null grenades, which honestly isn't that great.
Usually those squads are like Rat 3 anyways.
Yeah, and then at the same time, usually those squads like are gonna want to be doing other things. Like, it's gonna be very situational where you're like, I have to kill that gate. Let me null grenade it, or a sentinel. Like, those are your options. You're attacking a sentinel or a gate. And yeah, so melee squad's not a good fit, and other squads are difficult because most squads have really valuable charges. Like, on Annihilators, you're giving up, for these other spikes, you're giving up ignoring cover. On Enforcers, you're giving up a second attack. On the new Marcher World squads, you're giving up a second attack. On a lot of other things. It's just...
What are you giving up on the new Empyrean squads?
We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm talking about things it's bad with.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Yeah, no, he had to take that.
We're gonna talk about things.
It was low-hanging fruit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's a very situational model. Like, sometimes being able to spike to ignore cover might be super valuable. If you really need to kill that thing and you don't have ignoring cover already, which there's not a lot of squads where that's going to be valuable on, right? Or, being able to corrode that thing is going to be super, super important, right? But
for her, the fact that her spiker has the carrying ablator is that a lot of the times what I think happens is you shoot first with her Rat 5 with the spiker and be like, well, maybe I don't have to do one of these other ones, which might be a risk. I can do her and guarantee it first with a charge, and then just go in with all the rest.
Yeah, and it kind of just depends on the situation, but she does have a couple of options there. At the same time, things that she's good with are the new Empyrean squads, because they have
Weapon Master and range attack.
Yeah, they have multiple attacks, they have Weapon Master, and they all have range attacks. So the reason that's important is because you can go in with the Angel Squad, for example, go in and make your 6 melee attacks charged, then spike the quartermaster and make your cover ignoring range attacks, which if the thing they were shooting at was in cover, they suddenly got, a 1 red dice swing, which is useful. Or if they really needed to apply corrosion to something, they could do that after making these other attacks that are, powerful. So it's really, really, it gives you more options because they can make their attacks first and then shoot. And at the same time, they just get bonus. So I think this is particularly useful on the Exalted Paragons because it's difficult for them to get their arc off of them unless they're attacking a warjack. So what you can do with them, you can also do the same thing with the flying angel squad, whose name escapes me right now. But
Antecessors Eternal or something.
Yeah, those dudes. But they want to keep their charge, so you gotta make decisions here. And they also have Slip Displacer as a valuable spike, so it's still competing. But on the Paragons, it's great because they can go in, they can make all their attacks, their melee attacks and their range attacks. Then after the whole squad makes all of their attacks, the quartermaster, you can spike and give them null grenades, and because they have Weapon Master, they can attack with all their weapons. So then they all just get an extra null grenade attack on top of the attacks that they already made. So if they're within 6 inches of a gate and they want to go kill this other thing, they go and they try to kill the other thing, and then they spike and they get 3 free attacks on the gate. Like, it's gross.
Fair and balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any squads in the game that she gets quite as much value out of as the Empyrean Weapon Masters.
Yeah, any squad that has Weapon Master, she's going to get the most amount of value on.
Which are currently only the Empyrean squads.
Yeah, which are currently only the Empyrean squads. As more squads come out and they get Weapon Master, we might see some different situations. But regardless, she's a free model in your list.
Yeah,
right?
I do think that she's
there.
good in other places as well. Like, I think adding her to a Tracer squad just to give, a nice beefy model that also has a very valuable attack is very good. I think she's fine in like Annihilators, but I don't think she's optimal in any way. Just because they could just have her spike and give her the whole cover ignoring thing. And then she's a Rat 5 that ignores cover at that point.
Yeah, after they make their attacks, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they can buff her up is what ends up happening. So there's a lot of cool stuff that can go on there. And some squads it's gonna be very hard to bring her anyways. Like the Angel squad on Empyreans, that turns that squad into a 4 DC squad. Now that squad's good enough to where do I bring a heavy warjack or do I bring this squad? You're still probably leaning towards the squad. But for like regulators, it's very hard to justify her on there. Like, I know she's an extra box that adds beef to the squad, but with her and the attachment, they suddenly turn into a 7 model squad and they're 5 DC.
Listen, those witch hounds can get corrosion.
They can. I'm excited for those witch hounds. I think Empyrean, she's a no-brainer to bring. I think most of the rest of the time, she's going to be a very valuable Rat 5 attack that adds beefiness to your...
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
But, yet again, there's no reason not to own her, because it's sort of like she has the mantlet thing. You should own at least a couple mantlets, because at their very worst, if you overfill a gate, you can actually just remove that arc and have it off of there, and that's very important to be able to get that arc back into your well. So, and that's at her worst.
Yeah, as long as you're deploying a squad, you've got an extra arc on there you don't know what to do with. You got the quartermaster.
Oh, and something to note for people that aren't aware, you can put one of each attachment available to a squad on them when you deploy them. So like those Annihilators we're talking about, you can put an Aegis and a quartermaster on.
Correct.
The Regulators, you can put the Witch Hounds and a quartermaster. There's no limitation to that. Now, she is a hero. You wouldn't be able to put her out on another squad unless you find a way to recall her. But just so you're aware, you can have 2 attachments on a unit. You just can't have 2 of the same attachment on it.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Does that cover us for this episode, guys?
Yes.
I think that's everything.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's listening and who's following us. Just while we were doing this cast, it looks like our other 2 episodes that we've done before this just went live. That was the AC episode, which we recorded first, and then through some Kickstarter comments, found out we were getting something in the rules wrong with solos not being able to double activate if they can remove their own activation token. We had talked to how Saber's getting two activations might be a little silly.
Well, we technically weren't
not
getting anything
possible.
wrong.
What?
So we technically weren't getting anything wrong.
We were
But
speculating.
We weren't getting anything wrong. They are updating the rules to where that is not possible.
But they did clarify that is not intentional and it will be removed in the new rule. So please go and listen to those. It's the AC and then the ISA one. That's the order we recorded them in. I personally think they're good listens, and I hope you're listening to this. And thank you.
Right on, guys. And on that note, you guys have yourselves a good one.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Essex Wargames. Now, if y'all enjoyed the content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, for more content, you can check out the Through the Void Gate blog, or join us on the Essex Wargames Facebook, Discord, and YouTube. Stay safe and roll super strikes.